You're listening to the Master Passive Income Podcast Network. Welcome to the Master Passive Income Show. My name's Dustin Heiner, and I'm here to help you get financial independence, quit that job, that just a road job, by investing in real estate so you never ever have to work a job again. And today, I am super excited to share with you how you can invest in mobile home parks. Yes, I'm not kidding. Mobile home parks, and make lots and lots of money doing it. And I have an expert on to show us how we can do it as well. All right, let's start the show.
Welcome to the Master Passive Income Podcast, where we talk about investing in real estate with a special focus on making enough money so you can quit your job and live the dream life. And now, here's your host, Dustin Heiner.
What's up? What's up? Super blessed as always to have you here with me on the show. Now, I have never invested in mobile home parks, and I never even wanted. The thought literally never came across my mind. But after today, talking to my guest, it has really started crossing my mind. It's something I would really, really love to look into doing. Now, when I first started in 2006, I started buying single-family homes. Single-family homes are so easy to buy and rent out, as long as you're doing it right. And obviously, if you listen to this show at any length, you'll know I say to build a business, make sure that the experts are telling you which properties to buy, which properties to not buy, what to fix up, what to do, inspectors, all that stuff. Like, we build the business first. You guys already know that. Now, with that, I have always just done buy and hold long-term rental properties. And honestly, the biggest reason why, it's still literally my bread and butter. And even though there are so many other ways to invest in real estate, that is by far, and it's my own experience, long-term buy and hold, I have the least headaches, the least problems, the least issues, and I keep making money. Now, I've grown into short-term rental properties, mid-term rental properties. I now own those, which I hadn't for a longest time because I just kept making money without having anything to worry about, like fixing or cleaning out houses, every time a person leaves, a tenant leaves, from Airbnb or something like that. I never really wanted to worry about any of that stuff, but at the same time, I knew I was leaving money on the table, meaning I could make more money with a short-term property. So with the short-term property, I now own short-term rentals now, and I love that I make a lot more money than I do with my long-term, but there is more headaches. You have to worry about star ratings. You have to worry about the cleaners. You have to worry about people going in and out, breaking things in your house. I kid you not, the first tenant that got into my most recent Airbnb, we had a little statue of a bird or something like that. Little, I don't know, $20, $15. It was a nice little decoration piece. Apparently, they broke it. They broke the stupid bird. Probably some kids or something, but it's just something like, oh my goodness, how is that even possible that you guys, this is the first people that go in there. So you have more money and you have more headache. With long-term, it's literally no headache whatsoever because I have property managers take care of it. The move's so slow, meaning people don't move out in, every 3 days. But the great thing is I made money. But now with that, the short-term properties are fantastic. So now that I am teaching short-term properties, because it's really not that hard. I mean, a lot of people focus on just short-term or mid-term, which I think those are great. But if you just focus on those, you're losing out on so many different things. Just like I was focusing just on long-term rentals, 12-month leases. Well, now what we have are different tools in our tool belt to rent and make money on our long-term buy and hold property. Now I say buy and hold, we're going to give these properties to our kids. We do not need to sell those. Now we could tap into the equity by taking the money out in a cash out refinance or home equity line of credit, which I literally do that all the time with all my properties, and then buy more properties. But we have different ways to make money. Long-term, we have stable, steady cash flow. Mid-term, more stable than short-term, but still not nearly as much as long-term as stable, but you make more money. Let's say 2, maybe 3 times as much as a long-term. Then if you do short-term, not stable at all, it fluctuates. And if Airbnb kicks you off or says you have a 1 star, then you're not going to get very much money out of that property and you make more money. So there's trade-offs, but there are different properties and different properties have different ways to make money from them. On top of that, I also love that we now have commercial real estate that we can invest in. And I'll be straightforward and say, literally from 2020 all the way to now, I had not invested in commercial properties. Sorry, I take that back. I did buy personally one, went into a syndication, invested my money with some friends of mine, and we bought some hotels, which they were doing great, but now they're not doing so great. In fact, they're cutting the distributions. That's, I'm an investor, a private investor that is a limited partner where I don't get extra money. I just get a return on my money. And then if we sell, I make money on it. Well, with that, my distributions are becoming less than they were when I first got started. I was making, I put 30 grand in. I was making $900 every quarter, which was a lot of money. That's not bad at all. Now it's literally dropped down to 300. So it's per quarter. So I'm hoping we never have to stop distributions, or they want more money out of me just to keep my equity. It's called a capital call, because just like any business, when you make money, then you get money. But when you lose money, you still have overhead, which means you have to pay bills. You have employees or whatever in the business. You have expenses. Well, you have to put your own private money into the business because it's not making money. Well, hopefully we're not going to have that. Now, I do know Brandon Turner. He was a guy on podcasts for Bigger Pockets, and he has his own syndications. He'll say, I have, 15,000 doors or something like that. But what he is he basically, other people, this is the, I guess, syndication. Syndicators don't say this, but I'm going to say this because I'm not a syndicator. Now, I literally just present my offerings, my deals that I put on. I recently just had that 355 unit apartment complex, which we're still taking on a couple different investors if you're still interested. But I just opened up my deal that I'm literally doing, but I'm not a syndicator. What syndicators do is people come to them and say, I have a deal, you can get money. And they put them together. And that's how somebody like Brandon Turner or many of these other syndicators have, 1,000, 2,000, however many doors. It's like lots and lots of doors, but they don't have that much money coming in. With that, Brandon Turner literally just stopped all distributions on all of his quote unquote assets, the properties that he has, because he got bad loans. He had hard money loans that when you get a hard money loan on a commercial property, it's not like hard money for a residential or 4 units and below, which our students, my Master Passive Income students, we do it all the time, getting hard money. Now, with these loans that Brandon Turner, and honestly, you're going to hear lots and lots of problems. I was just at a conference about multifamily investing, and everybody was talking about, oh my goodness, distributions have stopped, capital calls are happening, and people are very, very scared and upset that they'll lose money. Now, that's to say, that's when people were literally just finding a property, way overpaying for the property, and then saying, I can get a lot of people to invest money and we can just keep buying it because we're going to get appreciation. The value is going to go up. Well, we here at Master Passive Income, I have never ever done that. At least I try to never do anything like that. In fact, that was the first deal I've ever opened up to anybody else, that 355 unit apartment complex that I have in or near Nashville. The first time I ever opened up an offering was because we bought it right, 60 cents on the dollar. We had amazing financing. We underwrote it at 6.1%. We got it for 5.8, and a $32 million loan. That's a lot of money saved. And on top of that, we have 7 years. We have a lot of cash flow coming in. And so when you do commercial investing right, you actually, no, I'm telling you, you guys know this. You buy the property. That's when you make your money. You make your money when you buy the property. You realize it when you sell it. When these people, these syndicators, are literally buying and overpaying, and then somebody else 2 years later comes and overpays on top of that, and then another syndicator comes and pays on top of that, basically getting a lot of people investing in their deals, well, the fundamentals go out the door because they're salesmen. Well, I'm not a salesman. I'm literally an investor, just opening this up to you guys so that you guys can invest with me and learn how to invest. And the big thing that I am so excited about this episode is because commercial real estate is not just an apartment complex. It's literally not just that. It's all types of things that is real estate, but is not single family homes, like residential. So you could have apartment complexes. You could have commercial buildings like strip malls, even huge malls. You could have office buildings, convention centers. You could have warehouses. You can even have mobile home parks. And this is the reason why we have this episode, is because I found an investor. I was on his podcast, really awesome podcast as well, where I was sharing how I invest and how we at Master Passive Income invest. And then he's talking about how he invests in mobile home parks. And I think that's brilliant. And anyways, I don't need to go into it because you guys are going to hear the episode where he shares how he does it. Now, I will say there's a lot more moving parts. You can easily hear when he starts explaining things, you'll think of, oh my goodness, there's so many more moving parts than it is with the residential property. Now, just my suggestion, you could do whatever you want. I'm going to say what I've done. Only when I had my bread and butter, the residential 4 units and below, I had 30 plus properties. That's when I started branching out to other types of asset classes because I got really, really great at one asset class, residential 4 units and below. Really, really great at that. Then I started branching out into hotels, which is going fine. Hopefully it doesn't get any worse, but hopefully it keeps going well. Then apartment complexes. And then because I have my nest egg, I have my bread and butter, all the money coming in from the long-term buy and hold properties, I can literally invest in these other deals that will be amazing. And it's somebody can jump right into mobile home parks. You absolutely can. It's just a lot more work. Whereas residential is super, super simple. But I suggest that you look at all assets as a means to an end of financial freedom. And with that, there's so many amazing experts. I mean, I brought so many of them on my show that they do their asset class right. It seems like my guest does his asset class right, whereas I do residential right. Obviously, my students and myself are proof of that. I have other people do apartment complexes right, commercial buildings right. I mean, you can have all these asset classes that make you money and not necessarily diversify. You just have a lot of different assets. That's literally how the game works. The more assets you have, the more money you make, and the more wealthy you become. So let's jump into today's show where I interview a fantastic mobile home park investing expert, and he's going to show us how we can invest in mobile home parks like the experts do. Here's my friend Kevin Bupp on the show showing you how to do it as well. Here we go. Kevin, thank you so much for being here, man.
Yeah, Dustin, excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
This is great. So we were chatting, it was probably about a month or two ago on your podcast, which is a great podcast. And I love the title of the podcast, Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow. So I started investing in 2006. And back then, everybody, like quote unquote gurus, were telling me and everybody, you need to invest for appreciation because you're going to, make a lot of money in appreciation. Well, in 2008, it crashed. And all those people who were following those quote unquote gurus, they went bankrupt and those gurus went bankrupt. But I solely focused on cash flow. And that is because I can't feed my family with appreciation. But what I can feed them with is with the money that comes in every single month, buy food and put that on their plates. So I love the direction that you go with your podcast. But talk to us a little bit about your style investing because there's so many different great ways to invest, but cash flow, I think, is king, even better than just cash itself. But what's your style? Like, what's your main, if you said your cookie cutter, your one that you always do, your bread and butter type of investing?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think for us, it really comes down to answer that question. We're a commercial real estate investment group, and over the 20 years I've been investing, I started in single family, like a lot of folks do, and I, my early to mid 20s ended up building up a fairly substantial portfolio of roughly 130 single family homes, all throughout Southwest Florida here, and then wanted to find what I felt was a more efficient way to continue growing that portfolio. Dabbled in multifamily, some smaller apartment buildings, 12, 24. I think the biggest one was 76 units, but most of them were on the smaller size. And then dabbled, throughout the years. This is kind of like rolling into like 2006, 7, 8, into different types of commercial real estate investments, from industrial to office to retail, you name it. I feel like I've had an investment, or I currently have investments in pretty much the entire gamut of commercial real estate assets. However, I was introduced to mobile home parks, which is kind of our bread and butter. So back to your question, what style of investor or investment do we go for today? And our core competency is investing for cash flow, just like you had mentioned there. But the vehicle that we primarily use, because we have two different investment verticals, but our primary investment vehicle are mobile home parks, and we're value add investors. We like buying to where there's cash flow day one, but we also like the ability to know that we can make some improvements. We can pull some different levers, and inherently increase that cash or that NOI over months and years that we hold that asset. And speaking to appreciation, we do look at appreciation as icing on the cake. However, in commercial real estate, we like to perform what's called forced appreciation. So that's when we're going in and we're buying it at a base NOI, and we know that we can, again, pull those different levers, whether it be rent increases, whether it be lowering the expenses, whether it be billing back for utility usage. we can increase that NOI over a fairly short period of time, thus increasing the overall value. So, which is called a forced depreciation. I mean, we can then tap into that appreciation that we've created by means of a cash out refinance. But first and foremost, we're cash flow investors, just like you. We just use a slightly different vehicle to get there.
How did you get into mobile homes? Because I know, sorry, not just mobile homes, mobile home parks. Because I know the mobile home itself, that's a depreciating asset, and eventually it'll be worth nothing because it's not fixed to the ground. I mean, you could have a house that looks like a mobile home, but if it's attached to the ground, the government says, hey, it's a depreciating asset. But how did you get into mobile home parks? I mean, I always thought, that's a little scary. Maybe the clientele, maybe you have to worry about the mobile homes themselves. Like, how'd you get into that? And then how did you figure out how to make sure that you're making cash flow every single month from those?
Yeah, no, great questions. And so I'll speak to you make a mention of like kind of the clientele or the demographic that we might be serving in mobile home parks. And I want to hit on that first, and then I'll answer the primary question. But I think that's where the big misconception and perception is with mobile home parks is the clientele. And, I think that unfortunately for many, many decades now, our industry has been kind of lumped into all one bucket, and the bucket is the bad bucket. It's kind of the wrong element, wrong demographic, the wrong side of the railroad tracks, like the drugs, sex, and rock and roll. That's who lives in our parks, and that's just not the case. In fact, I like to use a little bit of a comparative analysis of you go to any city, any city in any state in any part of the U.S. and there's single family home subdivisions, there's multifamily apartments in different parts of town, and then there's mobile home parks. Well, let's go to the single family home subdivisions.
And I want to pause for a quick second and share that honestly, I really want you to invest in real estate. Now, my new goal is to help 1 million people invest in real estate. So 2 things I would ask from you. Number 1, if you get anything out of this episode, please share it with somebody else. Just say, hey, check out Dustin and Master Passive Income. He really wants to help 1 million people to invest in real estate. That's number 1. Number 2, I want to get you to invest in real estate. Get my real estate investing course absolutely for free. Text the word rental, RENTAL, to 33777. Rental to 33777. I'll literally give you my course, show you how to find an area of the country to invest, how to build the business first. I always talk about that, and how to find the right properties, how to make sure you're getting experts to do the work for you, and scale the business to where you're making $250 or more in passive income. Scale it to quit your job. I'll literally get it to you, or go to masterpassiveincome.com/free course. Obviously, it'll be in the description, but I really, really want you to invest in real estate, because the more that actual, normal, everyday people own real estate that are good landlords, the better everybody's life gets.
There's the one that are truly on the wrong side of the tracks, right? They've got the wrong element. They're in the bad school districts. They just attract the wrong crowd. You don't want to go there even in the daytime, right? And then you got the middle class. You've got the working blue collar neighborhoods, good hardworking folks, a lot of dual households, dual parent households that are working, but good, like not a lot, not crime, maybe a little civil dispute here and there, but just good folks that want to send their kids to good schools and do well by others. And then you've got the executive neighborhoods, right? The high end stuff, white collar type folks that are living there, sometimes multi-million-dollar neighborhoods. Well, a lot of the same exist in multifamily as well. You got the bad ones, you got the middle of the ground, then you got the top tier. Mobile home parks are really the same thing. You've got the really bad ones that we don't buy. We don't want to buy stuff on the wrong side of the tracks, that not in a good school district, not in the right part of town. I want to be in the right part of town, but I want to buy something that hasn't been run correctly. It's in the right part of town, it's in the right school district, but we know we can go in and make major improvements. We can invest, sometimes millions of dollars into upgrading the roads, the infrastructure, put playgrounds and put pools in community centers, bring new homes into the community and actually upgrade it to match what's in the surrounding area. And then on the other side of the spectrum as well, there's really nice mobile home parks, like down here in Florida, out in Arizona where you live. It's not even affordable housing anymore. There's some really nice lifestyle type communities. And so I guess I wanted to hit on that real quick, because the perception that the industry gets is it's very wrong. It's, there's very nice, there's very low end, and then there's right in the middle as well. And so, back to how we got into this sector. It was,
can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Because I definitely want to get how you got into it.
Yep.
Tying on to that.
Yeah.
So I've come across or driven past, mobile home parks that look maybe, I don't know, let's say C or B. Are you able to, because you said value add, you want to get in there and make it better, nicer and stuff like that. Is that something to where you actually get rid of the old mobile homes and get a new actual mobile homes that are really nicer? can you get it from a C to a B or even a B to an A?
Yes. I mean, here's at the end of the day, location is key to everything. And so I can, if I've got the property of the park, the community is in the right location, right? Again, like good school district, good part of town, path of progress, good surrounding neighborhoods, but it's got a bad element in there because it's just been running correctly. The current owner hasn't infused capital back into it. They haven't kept up with the roads or the common areas. They haven't had a good screening process. They've let the wrong tenants move in. And so, we can get rid of we can fix all that. As long as I've got a good location and I know that there's a demand for affordable housing in that marketplace, I can get rid of all the bad. I can make improvements and I can attract really good people to that location. To speak to your question of the homes, we own mobile home parks where we've got homes in them from even dating back to the 60s. I know we've got a lot of parks we brought brand new homes in. In fact, right now, today we have 4 brand new homes being delivered to one of our communities up in Illinois. And so it's all dependent because just because a mobile home might be old, if it's been maintained just like you should maintain your home, they can last a very long time. You can remodel them. I mean, like we've got some parks that have got homes that are built in like the late 60s, early 70s that you walk inside. I mean, it's drywalled. It's got LED lighting. I mean, it's been kitchen's been upgraded. The bathroom's been upgraded. They might have put vinyl siding on the exterior that might have been, maybe metal sheathing before that, and it does not look like a 1960s home. It looks like a fairly new home. And so, there's lots of different considerations there of whether or not we might bring new homes in. But if it's a home that's long gone, if we buy the community, let's say that we're getting rid of the bad elements. Some of those bad elements might be old, beat up homes that just aren't worth putting money back into. If we can just buy a new one and just plug and play for less expensive than what's going to cost to refurb this one, then we absolutely hands down do that. So we can get in, like right now, the units that we're bringing to our community today, these are brand new. They're made by Champion, which is one of the major manufacturers. They're 3-bedroom, 2-bath. They're about 1,200 square feet in size, and they're probably what you'd classify as like mid-tier quality. So not like complete low-end builder grade and not super high-end quality, but right in the middle of the realm. And our price on those, our dealer price of what we were paying for them is roughly $58,000. And so, I mean, you can see it's, $52 or $3 per foot for a brand new home. That's basically got the same fit and finishes as what you're going to find in a lot of the, apartment complexes that were built in the last 10 years, like just the traditional, not like high-end luxury, executive, but just the normal run-of-the-mill apartment complex, the same fit and finishes that you're going to find there. So we will absolutely bring new homes in. It breathes new life into the community, but it also allows us to attract, again, a better element, than trying to rent out or sell an old beat up rusty trailer.
So I definitely want to hear how you got into it, because you went from single family homes and commercial as well, but then you have your bread and butter being the facility. Like it's not just the mobile homes themselves. You own the park and the homes. Like, but how did you get into that? Because that's not the easiest thing to get into.
And we don't, for the most part, we don't own the homes. And so even when we bring brand new homes in, the primary objective, and it's not 100% all the time, is to sell the homes back to a new homeowner. And then they pay the lot rent. So like in a perfect world, we're not in a perfect world, but if it was perfect, we wouldn't own any of the mobile homes. We would just own the land and the infrastructure and rent the lots. And then, because along with the homes comes just like the normal maintenance and upkeep you would have with a traditional, standard rental. We've got, roofing, we've got plumbing, AC, all that kind of stuff. You've got turnovers when people leave. You got to go in and make ready again. You've got downtime where you're losing revenue. And so, like, all those elements exist, the same they do in any other rental class. And so, our preferred method is to sell them outright. And so, we actually don't try to make any money on the mobile home. So when we bring a new home in, or even if we take a used home that was in there, and we own it, we'll refurb it, and all we want is the break even. In fact, sometimes I'll even lose a couple $1,000s on maybe what we have into a home to get a quality person who's got good credit that's going to buy that home and take that thing off my balance sheet. Because I know what happens is, a traditional renter, their standard tenancy is probably going to be anywhere between 12 and 18 months. And you got the anomalies that stay, many, many years, but like normally it's 12 to 18 months. Whereas we've got homeowners in some of our communities that have lived there for 45 plus years. When they're a homeowner, it becomes very much like someone that's living in a single family home subdivision. They live there, for many, many years. And let's say they have to move, they get a job transfer, or, they just want to move to a larger home or a different neighborhood. They continue paying that lot rent. They put the home up for sale. Someone else buys it. That new person assumes the lot rent, but we never have like a downtime. We never have a period of time where we're not getting revenue coming through the door. That lot rent's coming in month after month, year after year. And so it's a much more consistent business model. And on top of that, it's a lot less maintenance. We don't have to have repair guys full time on payroll in the communities where we don't own homes. In fact, most of the time, we've just got one community manager. When we don't own any homes or own very few, we got one community manager. We might have like a 1099 individual that we just rely upon. That's a local vendor that comes and does ad hoc repairs here and there. But in the communities where we actually own a lot of homes, so we own a few communities where we might have a few hundred homes. In those instances, we've got the staff is massive, right? We've got 2-3 full-time, maintenance guys on payroll. In addition to that, we've got a lot more management staff because we're turning units. We're having to do a lot more leasing and turnover and make readies. And it's just, there's a lot more moving parts. And so our preference is to always literally own 0 homes. And so we always continue sell the homes in our portfolio. And maybe one day we'll get down to a net 0, but we'll see. Time will tell. Because when we bring these new homes in, sometimes we end up having to rent some out, just dependent how fast we can absorb it in that marketplace. So we might sell 70% of them and then have to rent the other 30%. And then over time, we'll try to convert those rentals into homeowners if we can. Back to your original question about how do we get into it? So
it's amazing. I love it.
So I was always looking for when I owned my single family home portfolio, I was young, I wasn't married, I enjoyed the hustle and I basically was running the business model that my original mentor had taught me. And so like I was, don't fix what isn't broke. And I ran with it. And I ended up building quite a big portfolio across, it was like 5 different counties down here in Florida. And it was spread out. These 5 counties were huge. I mean, from like tip to tip, you're talking like a 4-hour drive. And so I found a lot of inefficiencies that exist with that model, and like the sales and leasing side, having to do repairs and have maintenance guys drive from one unit to another. That might be a 45-minute drive, no consistency with materials, like with paint or just, kitchen cabinets and all that, like lots of inconsistencies that existed. And I ended up buying a couple of apartment buildings, and I realized that there was a lot more efficiencies with that model than how my current model was being run. And so at that point, I kind of went all in to buy more apartments. And then I was like, well, heck, a lot of the financing I was getting was really, it was commercial financing. I was learning something new just by buying these apartment complexes. And it opened my eyes up to, number one, a lot of these commercial loans I was getting was a lot easier than getting the darn loans I was getting on these single family homes. Because back in the day, it's unlike today. Today, there's portfolio loans for single family properties. That didn't exist.
Loans, yes.
Yeah, that didn't exist. I mean, like that just didn't exist, And so, we had commercial lines across maybe 10, 15 of our single family homes, and we had a number of lines like that, but it was very difficult to get. The terms weren't great at all. And so anyway, I found the commercial side just to be more attractive on even just buying the properties. It was less reliant upon personal income or anything like that. It was just really, it was looked at more of an investment. Today, it's a different world because single family is very much considered an investment. Institutions are in the space. And so now there's like kind of there's enough case studies that just document the proof that it's a great investment. Big groups are in it, and so banks look at it differently than what they did back then. And so I just found it easier, more scalable to buy commercial real estate. So to buy larger properties that had larger cash flow, and that's what kind of drove me that way. However, what got me into mobile home parks, fast forward to 2008, my single family down here in Florida, it was like Florida, Phoenix, Arizona, most of California, pretty much all of Florida, actually, and a few other markets. The real estate market is tanked. We had a lot of excess building down here leading up to 2008. Lots of rooftops being built for populations that weren't coming, and then when things dried up, a lot of the workers went away. A lot of the workers were construction-based workers, and so a lot of the folks that were living here moved away. So we just had a glutton of inventory laying around, and so I struggled a great deal with just vacancies in my single family home stuff, a lot of even the multifamily stuff, but just struggled and found myself in a very precarious state where I lost pretty much everything in the first 2 years of that Great Recession. So fast forward a couple years, I went from 2008 to 2011. It was mostly damage control, just trying to sort through the mess and come out on the other side of it. And so I was at the stage of my life where I was kind of like, okay, what's round 2 look like? I have nothing. This is 2011. So I lost my personal residence, had a sub 500 credit score at this point in time. Literally got bank accounts garnished. I mean, it was a very, very messy couple of years. And so I was trying to figure out, like, the world was different. 2011, the real estate market, just everything looked so dramatically different than what it was leading up to 08. And so I was just out kind of trying to figure out what the next stage was, what round two was in real estate. I was ready to get back in, and I thought it was going to be multifamily. Because I was like, you know what? I understand residential real estate. I get everyone needs a roof over their head. That's just simple to understand. And just by happenstance, one of my good buddies, he said, hey, I know you're kind of on this journey. You're just talking to people, trying to figure out where you want to go and what you want to do. Go meet up with Randy. Randy was a commercial banker for 30 years. He just retired a couple of years ago. He's a cool dude. He's really smart, and he's local to you. I'll introduce you guys. Go meet up with him for lunch. And no agenda, no objective at me other than meeting someone new and just trying to expand my network. And come to find out, Randy retired and ultimately bought a couple mobile home parks upon retirement. And his story went as though like he was on he was like, I was on the wrong side of that P&L for many, many years. And when I retired, I saw how wealthy all my clients were getting off of buying these assets and doing cash out refinances. He's like, I knew when I retired, that was going to be my retirement. I was going to buy a couple mobile home parks. And he did. He bought 3 here in Florida. And anyway, the conversation over 2 hours turned into why mobile home parks were so great. I never considered the asset class ever. And he intrigued me so much during those 2 hours that I left there. I was like, that's it. That's what I'm doing. I'm at least going to go buy one. I'm going to go buy one. I'm either going to approve or disprove, right? Like, what Randy's thesis is. And I did that. It took me about 14 or 15 months to buy the first one. Bought it up in Atlanta, major turnaround, major stress property. And nothing that I was scared of by any means. I've done it many, many times over, at least not in that type of asset, but with residential and other types of deals. And literally owned that property. That was 2012. Owned it up until I think about 2 years ago. But anyway, bought that first one. It was a major turnaround. Took about 8 months to stabilize it. Literally did a cash out refinance within a year. Got all my original capital back. All of I had one private investor that helped fund the deal. Got him paid back. And literally that one deal alone, after that cash out refinance, getting all my money back out after debt service and everything, it cash flowed nearly $100,000 a year. It was a 34 unit mobile home park. Net cash flow after debt service, after all expenses, it cash flowed nearly $100,000 a year. I was like, okay, there's something here. So I went and bought the next one, then bought the next one, then bought the next one. And here we are today, I don't know, 50 some odd mobile home parks later. And, we're spread amongst 15 different states now. A little bit more of a formalized company. Back then it was me and maybe a partner, up until really 2017, it was truly just, me using whatever money I had, trying to recirculate the money I was that made in that first property to the second, to the third, bringing in a couple private investors when I needed, but I wasn't raising capital from big outside sources. I wasn't doing syndications. I was just, kind of leveraging my small network that I knew and folks that knew me and trusted me. And then come 2017 is when there was enough demand. I had enough folks reaching out to me, a lot of it through my podcast. I would talk through case studies on my show of the deals we were doing, and for no purpose other than just to share, and the excitement and just the fun things we had working behind the scenes. And I had a lot of folks reach out saying, "Hey, I'd love to put some money in your deals. Put some money in your deals." And so in 2017, we formally launched our first. The company Sunrise Capital was formally created, and myself and a partner launched our first we're on our fourth fund now, but it was our first fund, mobile home park specific fund. And that was 17. And again, and from 17, I think till today, within the company, we've done over 40 mobile home parks. Today we own, I think 18. We're in 13 different states at this point. And, I think we've owned it as many as 18 states. And anyway, so it's been a fun ride, and we love the asset class, and it's provided a great deal for our investors and our families. And we just really enjoy it.
So I love the idea of you selling the mobile home to an actual homeowner. I'll give you an example. So when I first started investing, it was in Youngstown, Ohio. And I definitely don't suggest any of my students or anybody to invest there. It's really, really rough. It's a
tough market.
It's a very, very tough market. You have to have a really good property manager, and they're hard to find there. So the properties that I have, though, there, I've turned them into rent to own. And with that, the great thing about the rent to own, number one, I don't have any expenses other than the taxes. But I said to the tenants, imagine me as the bank. Eventually, you're going to own the home in 10 years. And so what I have now is just cash flow, which is great. And I actually have somebody that's going to own a house, which is going to make the economy better. Like people, when they own the house, they own where they live. They have so much more pride in that. They're going to take care of it as opposed to everybody renting. So that's another big one. Blessing another
Yep.
family is another big thing. But I love your model too. So as soon as the rent to own is done, I don't have any more money coming in. As soon as you're done, they own it. You're making money still. Like you're just
That's right.
making money because they're renting the land, which is, and obviously the infrastructure and everything. But I love that business model. So talk to me a little more about that. If somebody were to get into, let's say, okay, down the street, I saw there's a 30 plus unit mobile home park. I want to try to buy it. What would be the number one things that they need, like the step? Obviously, contact the seller and all that sort of stuff. But like once you acquire it, is there a secret sauce for making sure that you're getting your cash flow as high as you can quickly?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a secret sauce. I mean, number one, location is important, right? It's got to be in the right market. You got to ensure that, for example, like I guess using Youngstown, Ohio is it might be maybe not a great example, but like affordable housing is a problem in the majority of the country, but not the entire country. Like there are markets, Flint, Michigan's probably a good one, right? You can go buy a home in Flint, Michigan for probably $40,000, $50,000. And there's probably other markets like that in rural Midwest areas, or just, maybe the South, like in Louisiana, rural parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, things like. I'm sure there are areas where affordability isn't necessarily the problem. Jobs are a problem, and just folks don't have money. It's just a poor area. And so long as you're not buying, I don't have the secret sauce for how to fix that. Right? You can't fix the neighborhood, but if you buy a bad property in a good neighborhood, then you can fix that, because you can attract good folks there if you do it right. And so it's locations first and foremost, and then a couple other considerations. I think just to look at some of the big, I guess, gotchas that might trip you up, that you need to be kind of eyes wide open about. Is infrastructure is a big one. Like most of the time you buy the community, you own not just the roads. You can see the roads, you can see the condition of the road, and so that's pretty easy to evaluate. But what you don't see is underneath the roads, right? The water lines, sewer lines. In addition to that, you've got like electrical pedestals. Is it above ground electric, below ground electric, things like that? You probably own all that utility infrastructure, and so that could be very expensive. I mean, if there's, some of these parks were built, 60, 70 years ago, and depending on the soil and the acidity of the soil of where it was built, how is the water lines? How have they held up? If they're not PVC, which they didn't use PVC 50, 60, 70 years ago, how are those water lines held up? Do they have a lot of, there are a lot of breaks in the system? Are you going to have to replace sections or maybe the entirety of it? Like that could be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of a infrastructure repair that, if you didn't do your due diligence, it might completely foil the deal. I mean, you wouldn't make any money. Yeah. So, I mean, we go through, we go through and, with like the sewer lines, we hire plumbers that have specialty equipment. They go and do sewer scopes. And so they'll send little cameras through all the sewer lines and identify, is there a lot of, number one, what's it constructed of? What material is it made of? Because there's some sewer material way back in the day. Only one comes to mind that's just problematic. It's called Orangeburg. It's basically like laminated cardboard. I don't know why they ever used it, but they used it for like 15 years. And as you can imagine, once that laminate on that cardboard, goes away, cardboard doesn't last all that well when it gets wet, or all that long when it's wet, just collapses. So, number one, we run the sewer scope through. We want to see what condition the sewer lines are in. Are there a lot of trees are pretty, but they're problematic underground. And so do we have a lot of areas where we got massive root intrusion? We're going to have to remove trees, or just have to budget for a roto-rooter coming out once a month, because we're going to have backups all the time, and things you might not think of. You're like, oh, these trees are really pretty, lots of shade, but like that's going to add $20,000 of expenses every year because of roto-rooter and just having to go in and cut these roots out and do all that kind of stuff. Right. And so, as far as like the water lines, I mean, you can typically just dig up a couple areas and find out what the material of the water lines are, and then, the overall condition. You can also look at their P&L and determine, like, have they had massive fluctuations in their water bills over the last couple of years, the park as a whole? If the answer is yes, it's probably because they've had a lot of leaks. They've had a lot of breaks in the line in different parts of the community, and that's pretty much the only thing that causes massive inconsistency in the actual expenses on the water side. You might have a little bit of fluctuations, but not like to the tune of like 10% high one month and then back down again. And so that would be telltale signs that like there's breaks happening, and if it was happening consistently over the last 3 years, the water lines are in rough shape, and like either you're going to have to budget to replace everything, or you're going to have to just budget like literally you're going to have a cost associated with loss of water. Like you're going to have to eat that bill when it fluctuates like that, because you can't bill back the residents for water they didn't use. If it's just leaking out before it gets to them, you're going to eat that cost, but then you're going to eat the cost of probably having a backhoe come in, literally digging up the road, digging up an area, and just repairing that water line, which can be thousands of dollars to have a plumber do that. So those are big ones. I say outside of that, we see a lot of properties, and we own a number of parks that are on private utilities. So like septic systems for sewer. We have a few communities that are on wastewater treatment plants. So it's basically a miniature version of what like our municipalities use to treat sewage. It's typically they're in parks that are in areas where maybe they're not rural, but they're in an area that doesn't yet have public sewer run to it, or there's maybe not a plan to have public sewer run to it. And so you have to treat your own sewage. And so those are specialty. And they're we get engineers involved to inspect them. And because it can be the difference of, this thing seems like it's running fine, but all of a sudden, you've got $400,000 worth of repairs. You got to upgrade blowers. You've got infractions with the EPA or whoever the regulatory agency is. You didn't do your due diligence. And you've got, code violations. All this kind of stuff can like creep up and cost you a lot of money. And so infrastructure is the big one. Then outside of that, normal stuff like just verifying financials, making sure that, like take the rent roll and take the P&Ls, and then make sure you got bank statements showing that the money's actually going in. They're not just, fabricating renters or homeowners or bodies in those units. And I've never had that. We've never had that happen. I've heard of horror stories, but just really cross-referencing everything like you do with you would do that with a normal deal, right? Like you just got to do all your due diligence. And if you're not the guy to do it, like for example, I'm not an engineer. I can't tell you if a wastewater treatment plant's bad or if it's going to need certain equipment. I'm not a plumber. I cannot tell you, what condition. If I looked at the sewer scope, I can visually see some things, but I'm going to rely upon an expert to tell me, like, really help me put together a budget of what's going to cost me to budget for continual repairs or to replace, and so that I can kind of run a pro forma, but get experts involved around you to give you the right guidance so that you can make an educated decision. So again, lots of things that you would do in any type of deal, but
absolutely. And the little bit of money that you would spend on an inspector or engineer, I mean, it's going to be a little bit of money, but it would be, you might be thinking, oh man, I don't want to spend that, but it'd save you so much if you do that inspection. Even just think of a single family home. A lot of people say, well, Dustin, should I actually get a home inspection? I'm like, absolutely. Well, it's going to cost $400 before I even own the house. I'm like, yes, but it's going to save you lots and lots of money.
That's right.
Same thing with having engineers or having people that are smarter than us look at this stuff, that do this all the time. Now, I have a question for you. So you covered a lot of potential problems as well as expenses that we're going to have. How do we make sure that we're making cash flow on these? Because you have, let's say a 30 unit facility. You have 30 units there. You have to make sure that they're rented. But like, how do we make sure that we're making passive income? Because like that story, you're buying your first one, making $100,000 a year. That's phenomenal. How do we make sure we do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of it comes down to simple math. I mean, you got to know, number one, what the market is. Like if you're going to buy a park, let's say let's just say they're all lot renters. All the homes are owned by the residents. It keeps it simple for the purposes of this kind of example. You want to, number one, let's say the lot rents are $300 a month. Like, do your market study and find out what the competitors are at. I mean, is there some room there? Can we push rents to $400 a month? And typically you're not going to lose any of the residents. If you find the market's at $500, you're currently at $300, you got a $200 delta that you can ultimately, increase rents over time. I suggest not doing it all at once, because that's just such a inconsiderate large increase that folks have to bear. But you'll find out there's a delta there that you can increase rents, number one. So do the market study. And then once you understand where you're currently at today, like gross potential income with where the rents are, and then where you intend to take them, it's really just a matter of doing some simple math. I mean, you can look and see what the property taxes are. You can look and see what the insurance is going to cost. You should be able to look and see what their current expenses are, but get your own quotes. A lot of times I'll find they're underinsured, and so their insurance might not be adequate, which is why it's only $1,800 a year, whereas it might be $4,000. So go ahead and get your own quotes. The taxes, you can do simple math on that. You can look up tax rolls on the county website, but also be understanding that if they've owned this for a very long time, there's a really good chance that it's going to get the taxes are going to get reassessed, and it could be a substantial jump. If it's currently assessed at $1 million and you're paying $3 million for it, depending on the county, every county is different. You need to understand what the formula is and how they look at sales, and does it trigger a reassessment? And if so, how much is it going to be? But you can get that information by calling the county. And so again, taxes are big, insurance is big, and the debt. Those are the big three. You got repairs and maintenance and things like that you have to kind of budget for. But you just really, you can back into, am I going to be left with any money over when it's all said and done? And then try to figure out what your cash on cash return is going to look like. Am I net positive on the cash flow after debt service and all those expenses I've kind of lined out? If you're net positive in cash flow, then you've done well. How well, I don't know. It all depends on like what type of returns you want to be hitting. And you can just do that simple math based on how much of a down payment you had to give, or what was the overall equity investment you put into the deal. And then basically, divide that with the cash flow that you're able to achieve on an annual basis. And that will tell you what your cash on cash return looks like. But, I'd say the simple back of the napkin, don't ever buy something on the back of the napkin, but the simple back of the napkin is just assume that you're going to have anywhere between a 35% and a 40% expense ratio. And so again, you got your gross income, go ahead and multiply that by, 0.65 or 0.6, and then come up with what you believe your NOI is going to be. And that's before debt service. That's before your debt service. And then figure out what your annual debt service is. And again, see if you have anything left over. Like, that's a simple back of the napkin. Don't buy it that way, but it'll give you a gut check. Like, is this thing is there no way to make this work? Or, this seems interesting. I need to dig a little deeper. I need to get real accurate expenses now so that I can really hone in and see if this thing, how profitable it can be. Because it looks pretty good now, but I need to, it might not be 40% expense ratio. Like, once you actually start lining out the taxes and insurance and what you think the repairs and maintenance are going to be, it might only be 33%, right, on an annual basis, which means that it's going to look a little better than what your back of the napkin was, or it could be quite the opposite way as well. So,
be a way that, let's say 30 units or 30, actual mobile homes, is there a way to give like a bare minimum? Like, if you're not making $500 a month per unit, or whatever, $200, whatever, in passive income, is there a way to have that as like, if you don't get this, then don't buy it?
Yeah, not. I mean, I guess there is, but I mean, for me, I want to know, like, if I put $100,000 in as a down payment or whatever the number might be, that I'm getting a certain return on that initial investment. Like, so that's how we look at it. And the answer for everyone's going to be different. I will tell you that, we look at it from an annualized cash return on that money, but then we also look at it for, what does the business plan look like for this deal? Like, are we going to bring in a lot of homes? You'll get the rents up over 3 years and do a cash out refinance. So we look at the annual cash on cash return, but then we look at, hey, once we've executed that business plan, what's that actual return really going to look like? Because we're going to get it's going to get juiced at year 3 or year 4 when we do a cash out refinance, because we've added all this value to it by forced appreciation. And so, but for us, to answer the question for us, we want a minimum of an 8% cash on cash return on an annualized basis. But I would tell you that we've done deals that have had like 20 and 30% cash on cash returns. And so, if we put $100,000 into a deal, we're getting in return on an annual basis $20,000 or $30,000 on that original $100,000 we put in. That's how we look at it. I'm sure you can probably maybe chunk it down even more basic than that, but I think you really need to understand how much of a return you're really like. What true return are you achieving on your investment? Like, I think that's a better metric than just maybe, can I get $250 a month per unit? It's not telling you the whole story, because depending on how much money you had to put into the deal, right? Like, it's not giving you the metrics that you really need to determine if that was a good investment or a bad one. But the cash on cash return is like, that's the truth. Like, that's what I'm really making on my money. And if I'm only getting a 4% cash on cash return, well, tell you what, I just go put my money in T-bills and I'll make more than that. Like, and that's easy. That's guaranteed. Yeah. Like, that's guaranteed. So like, is there an easier way to get that return than to go do all this hard work? Right. And so like, that's another consideration as well.
That's a great point. So why would you ever sell a mobile home park? You said you sold at least one, like a couple of years, but like, why would you sell those?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there could be a number of reasons. So we sold quite a bit from our company, late 2020 through 2022, and the first consideration for selling something might be, and we own things in funds, and so there's got to be a life cycle of the fund. There's got to be a clear path to get all of our original capital back to our investors. And so each one of these funds might own a dozen properties. And so first we start looking at, which ones have we fully executed our business plan on? Which ones have we truly forced a lot of appreciation? Because those allow us to start getting big chunks of money back to our investors, getting them the original capital back, which basically de-risks the entire investment for everybody involved. So we look at it from that perspective. But then we also look at, the deals that maybe we bought a park in, call it middle of Georgia, a particular city. I don't just throwing it out there. And the only reason we bought that, in fact, we have one today. It's like 60 spaces. I thought we won't go buy just a 60 space property that's not within driving distance of something else we own, because we lose economies of scale. We lose efficiencies because if someone's got to fly there just to go there and then go back just to check on a couple times a year, it's incredibly expensive. It's very impactful to that P&L statement for that one small deal. And so we might identify a property like, gosh, we thought we were going to expand more in this area, and we just haven't been able to. We haven't been able to buy more property to justify being here. And so for that reason, we've already executed the business plan. We got a lot of equity in it. Let's just sell it, because we don't see ourselves growing in this marketplace. So that's one reason. That's typically the primary reason. Outside of that, I will say that as you own properties, you always have a certain perspective going in. Like you think you eyes wide open. I think I see everything, but just there's always some type of skeleton. There's always the gotcha of some sort, some bigger than others. And some properties just perform better than others, and some perform worse than others, right? Like you have a certain expectation. Sometimes it's met and sometimes it's not. And so ideally, if for whatever reason that property just hasn't, it doesn't mean it lost money. It just means we're putting a lot of energy and effort into it. It just hasn't really met our performance metrics for a number of years in a row. And while we could continue on, maybe someone else can do it better than us. Let's move on. Let's take our chips off the table on that one, and let's pass it on to someone else and give them a run at it. So we've sold a number of properties for that reason. Not that there was anything wrong with them. They didn't, maybe we thought they were going to be a triple, and they ended up being a double. And we just felt as though we'll never get them to the triple status. They're always going to be a double. And for that reason, it's a good one to actually sell out of the fund and get some more capital back to our investors. And so really what we attempt to do with our funds, again, maybe we have a dozen properties in there. Maybe we'll end up selling 4 of those properties out of the 12. The other ones we'll do cash out refinances on. But what it leaves us with is, number one, all of our investor capital back. And number two, it leaves us with the 8 best properties out of the 12 that were in there. The ones that we really wanted anyway, the ones that we worked out the kinks. We identified that these are the absolute winners. These exceeded expectations. And for that reason, instead of selling them, let's just play the cash out refinance game. It's tax-free money. We get all of our investor capital back, and we continue to ride that cash flow wave for as long as we'd like to ride it. And so we've got a number of assets that we own just like that, where we'll own for a very long time, and that we'll just never sell. So again, never a perfect answer of like why we might sell, but like those are some of the big considerations that we look at. Yep.
Well, that's great, Kevin. I mean, I could definitely keep talking to you forever about this stuff, but I definitely want everybody to know how to find you, check out your podcast and everything that you're doing. Share with us how people can either connect with you or find you on your podcast or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's great. I appreciate that. So I guess first and foremost, if you want to learn a little bit more about our company and what we do, you can go to investwithsunrise.com. And, there you're going to learn about Sunrise, about the company. We buy mobile home parks. One thing we didn't talk about today, we also buy parking investments. So parking lots and parking garages. Those are basically our 2 verticals, mobile home parks and parking. You can learn, what type of assets we own today. We do have an offering open right now. But we've got a lot of other information on the website. We go as far as putting case studies up of historic deals that we either still own today, or that we've exited out of, that we've gone full cycle on. We even go as far as putting up appraisals and things like that. And so anyway, there's a lot of information there. You can kind of tinker around and get a good understanding of our business and what it is we do. And then outside of that, if you want to listen to the podcast, you can find me on iTunes or Spotify or Stitcher or whatever the different platforms that you use, or go to my personal website, kenbupp.com. That's where I host the podcast as well. So I'm not too hard to track down, especially with my last name. It's kind of unique. So you type that in, like you end up finding me somewhere.
Very cool. Kevin, thank you so much for being on. I mean, so lots of great information. You can definitely tell that you know what you're doing. You've been doing it for a while too. So really appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Yeah, Dustin, thanks for having me, man. You do a great job here. Keep doing what you're doing. And again, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
And that is it for today. Go ahead and get my free real estate investing course. Text the word rental to 33777. RENTAL to 33777. You can also join my Real Estate Wealth Builders group coaching, get all my courses. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next show. See ya.